All right, welcome everyone to the GreenForges Interview Series, where we speak with key experts across the CEA and sustainability world to discover and explore themes through which to disrupt and improve these industries. I'm Ramón Pereira Bonilla, the GreenForges Community Manager, and today I am joined by our guest, founder and CEO of SpawnX, Vladimir Kaverin. How are you doing today, Vlad?
Yeah, thank you very much. It is nice weather here in Austria. And you?
I'm also doing great. It's not too bad down here in Florida. Probably a little bit warmer than it is over there in Austria, but can't complain too much. Um, awesome. So Vlad, before getting into controlled environment agriculture, you worked in a few different industries. You were a solo retail investor for 15 years, where you traded futures, options, and stocks, and then at peak of which you reached over $1 million, or sorry, over 1 million euro portfolio. Simultaneously, while you were doing the trading, you also had a few different sort of entrepreneurial endeavors. You started a 3D printing company, which designed hearing aids. You had an auto body and painting shop, and you also had a small business consulting firm. So definitely a wide breadth of experience. But then you had a slight pivot from services into products, where you were a supply chain manager for the Cathlon Group, which is a large European sports retailer. You worked with them for a few years, but then that is where you began to pivot again into controlled environment agriculture and into mushroom growing in particular. Can you talk a little bit about what it was that drew you into mushroom growing?
Yeah. So basically, I really enjoyed working at Decathlon. This was like other side. I worked at a retailer who is buying products from factories, and obviously, I was looking into production business to become this factory to supply the retailer, but obviously we are live in real world, and there are limiting factors. For example, I would have rather started a like sleeping bag production company, for example, as soon as I'm fond of trekking and hiking. But my limited budget was really limited, and basically there were only several options of a research production business to start, and we basically everyone, and one of it was mushroom farming. And the main reason why we started that, because we went through like many small and medium scale mushroom farms across Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and we so like we really saw a low tech business. Nothing is automated. Business is done like according your intuition, and so on and so on. And because we have many experience in the business automation and industrial automation and projecting, we decided that we can leverage that.
Awesome, awesome. So SpawnX sort of came out as a result of recognizing the sort of this low tech um, sort of space with mushroom growing that didn't have too much sophistication, but also coming from your experience as a supply chain manager where you felt like you know how to get product into the right places in a logistical way. So Vlad, it looks like SpawnX sort of, no pun intended, spawned out of a necessity for more sophisticated, high-tech mushroom growing, where there wasn't really a lot of sort of uh, good business practices, but more intuition-based uh, running of businesses related to mushroom growing, as well as, you already had this experience where, as a supply chain manager, you felt like you knew how to handle the logistics of getting the right product into the right places and doing so in a way that would allow your company to grow. Um, so that being said, I would love to talk about, what even is the value of mushroom farming? Like, what's the dietary benefits of mushrooms, first of all? I think a lot of people in the controlled environment agriculture space will focus on leafy greens. You have your occasional strawberry or tomato growers, but no one really talks about mushrooms. Like, why mushrooms? Um, and talk a little bit about actually, yeah, just why mushrooms and why is SpawnX growing them in particular.
So yeah, basically, when we started in 2019, there was already a plenty of city farming companies. Some of them, them like Up Harvest. Some of them already went pretty full IPO and so on and so on. So the market there is everyone wants to grow and knows how to grow salads, trying to do strawberry, tomatoes, and so on and so on. Obviously, there are some big things to grow. For example, tomatoes or anything vegetable as cheap as the conventional producers are doing that. This is the next step for city farming. But in mushroom farming, this is not the case. Actually, because mushroom farming is so much a closed world of small number of entrepreneurs that actually in Europe and in the USA. Obviously, in Asia the situation is different, and there are many mushroom farmers. But in our world, basically there is a little number of entrepreneurs doing something on their own. There's no major players. The technology is still not developed. There are many big production companies like the huge factories that produce champignons. They are pretty high end and well automated, but there are many more mushroom types except champignons, and basically humankind doesn't know how exactly to grow them in consistent, predictable manner in the matter of yield per time output. And basically, this is the main interesting thing that we are trying to solve. We have some results in it, but not the biggest ones. Yep.
Awesome, for sure, yeah. So it looks like I said, we have all these sort of high-tech, sophisticated players when it comes to urban growing of, you name it, lettuce, strawberries, kale, whatever. But when it comes to mushrooms, there seems to be only a few established players who are growing particular kinds of mushrooms, and not doing a wide variety of them. And then simultaneously, some of the smaller people aren't doing it at a scale where it's predictable, where you're able to get a large yield. And that's sort of where you guys come in. You guys want to have um, production closer to home. We can talk about that in a second. And more predictable production at an industrial scale, but you know, sort of as well as at a smaller scale because it's local. So I'd love for you to sort of walk through just the sort of technicals of how the technology works. Um, yeah, just sort of how does the technology work? If I were to put up, which I probably will do, your YouTube rendering that shows the SpawnX technology, what would you be saying over that as a narration? Like, what would be the key takeaways there?
So let us go through the conventional technology at first, because obviously producing mushrooms is much different from producing salads, strawberries, and so on. First of all, mushrooms do not need light. They do not do photosynthesis. They need only nutrition that they eat up from the soil, from the initial substrate we are growing them on, and they need only humidity from air that they get from air. But they also need the temperature regimes, and they need quite a bit of control of CO2 levels. In comparison, when you are growing salads, anything, you can have like thousands of square meters of your greenhouse and just open a window and it will be fine in terms of air exchange. But in mushroom growing industry, it is whole another world. Basically, for to produce for example, 1 ton of mushrooms per month, I will need around 10 tons of substrate that the mushrooms will eat. If I put these 10 tons of substrate in a room, like 300 cubic meters, then I will be pumping in around 6 to 7,000 cubic meters of air every hour, just to keep the mushrooms breathing, so they do not increase CO2 levels. And this is completely different engineering task, because on these levels of air exchange, we need to basically keep the humidity and temperature precise. And this is why we are not doing salads, and the salads farm are not doing mushrooms. So from the beginning on, we start from the straw or sawdust as a substrate. We prepare it, so basically it is autoclaved, sterilized, and then you put mycelium in it. And this process should be conducted in lab environment. And if you do not do so, you can get some cross-contamination, anything, molds, parasites. Then in the future, when after several days, from 20 days to several months of incubation period, you will know that you spoiled up your batch of substrate. And this is the first problem. Basically, not many farms have a lab, and basically there are many risks involved. What we did here, that we produced a substrate preparation machine where everything is made inside it. So basically, even the inoculation of mycelium to the substrate, so putting the mycelium to the substrate, is made inside our machine, and no human factor is being involved. You do not need to have a lab. Basically, it is like in the machine happening, and no risks involved. And then basically the next step, you prepare this mixed substrate with mycelium, and you do the incubation. In terms of while the incubation is happening, they do not produce yield, and they just eat up the substrate and prepare to produce fruiting bodies. And basically then you have your growing chambers where the climate is precise, as I said, to produce the exact amount of growing of fruiting bodies. Here, I said, the ventilation is crucial. And basically what we do is we have a fully automated ventilation system that does not require any human being involved in terms of tweaking its settings to provide precise amounts of air and humidity and temperature for the mushrooms. Basically, we tested that like from minus 35 degrees Celsius and to plus 35 degrees Celsius outside, and it works pretty well. And the last part, but not least, basically, you know, as like every salad grower or mushroom grower, it doesn't matter, in ultra fresh segment, all the shelf life periods are really, really crazy low. So for the mushrooms, the shelf life period is 10 days, and it is mostly spent on the logistics. So I need to harvest, package, and deliver within 1 or 2 days from the farm. Otherwise, retailers won't buy my stuff. And this is a really crazy task. And that's why, like, for now, the existing business model for every mushroom farmer is to run the mushroom farm on full capacity and try to sell everything from the farm each day. And basically, if you have your yield more than orders, then you sell it below net cost. 40% of mushrooms in the world are sold below net cost from the farms. This is losses, direct losses for the farmers. Will have penalties. If you obviously have less yield, then you is from retailers. And basically, we solved that. We have a prediction system that plans the production according to the sales forecast, and it takes into account mushroom growing cycles, your statistics from the farm, everything. And because of that, we can match the yield and the sales forecast with 90% accuracy in terms of like 6 months in the future.
Awesome. That is so exciting. There's so many different places there that I would like to jump into. Um, I'm gonna shout out a few of them now just so that we remember. I think the first one, which was the most interesting to me, is the short shelf life of mushrooms because honestly, it gives some of these like leafy greens a run for their money and just few how few days you have to, like you said, harvest and process and package your food and then get it to retailers. Um, and I think there's an interesting conversation there to be had about bypassing the retailers when you have a business model as a little bit as nimble as yours is. Um, the second thing that I'd like to talk about is, you said nearly 40% of mushroom production is sold below net cost because of this shelf life issue. I wonder how that affects, trying to get investors into a project like this one, right? When they see stats like that, that's to me as an investor, that'd be a huge red flag. So in a little bit, I'd love to hear how you deal with that dynamic. And then the last thing, and we can start with this, is, you know, you mentioned at the start just how important it is to have controlled CO2 outflow. One of the things that we talked about with one of our earlier interviews with Peter Lane was the importance for contingencies when you're building controlled environment agriculture production and farms. you know, if the power goes out, what happens, right? If your supply chain, there's a hiccup in your supply chain, what happens? If your energy prices go way up, what happens? So I'd love to hear about the contingencies that SpawnX is building into their systems to help mitigate against the unforeseen.
So basically, let's start with the last one. Yes, there are huge risks involved, and basically the current, as discussed, the current business strategy for all mushroom farmers is just to establish good contacts with retailers and make your farm as big as possible so that these 40% of losses selling below net cost won't affect you so much. This is the normal business model for huge farms to work with. And this is every time. And this is also about the second question about logistics. So this is all about compromises because, for example, champignons are good at surviving logistics, but for example, oyster mushrooms will lose around right of 10%. It will generate around 10% of rates for each 500 kilometers they travel by car or refrigerator, or for additional 2 days of storaging in the refrigerator. So they are very, very fragile. And this is every time a compromise of your production scale and the logistics distance. So in ultra fresh segment, you always need to try to put your production as close to the consumer as possible. And basically, in our case, in mushroom growing industry, basically there is no sustainable business model for doing so. There is a business model for producing champignons and delivering them over like 5,000 kilometers from the factory on giant scale. But for producing locally produced and mushrooms with lower demand, there is no business model. And this is where mushroom farms come in. Basically, we try to put grown as close as possible to the retailers. Unfortunately, for now, the retailers are the main player of providing demand for locally ultra fresh mushroom salads or whatever. But obviously, the idea of bypassing them and reducing logistics more is a good one. We tried that, and basically we delivered ultra fresh mushrooms to the flats, and it worked pretty fine. And like if I sell 10% of my production capacity on retail prices with the delivery, I double my profits of the farm. And this is a really cool thing. But you need to be able to generate the demand that you are to match your production capacities. And this is a big deal, to basically a big step that we need to take in the future, because obviously retailers have the wholesale demand. Wholesale way is the only way for now to provide the lower net cost of the mushrooms or anything you produce. So there is always a compromise of getting low net cost of the production, but make the production not a huge scale, so you can put it directly near the consumer. In our case, we focus on like small and medium scale businesses, basically farms somewhere from 300 square meters and above. And these can be profitable on wholesale prices. And if they add some retail component in their business unit, then they will be more profitable. From the investor side, yeah, it is hard. For now, we are raising our pre-seed round, and basically not but the fact that like 40% of mushrooms is sold below net cost is our problem. Nobody knows anything about mushrooms, and this is the main problem. Everyone knows how to grow salads. Every investor has invested or heard someone invested in city farming companies, but there is only like a small amount of entrepreneurs doing mushroom farming, and even smaller amounts of investors who is doing investment in them. And this is the main problem for us for now, and the main problem for industry at whole, coupled with the like low amount of actually specialists that are like able to build and maintain mushroom farms. Because you can check out universities, not many universities in the world provide such education in mycology and industrial mushroom farming. And basically, these two factors are the limiting factors of the whole industry. We, with our technology, we deal with the second one. Basically, our technology is a turnkey one. You do not need to be like mycologists to run a farm of ours. But in terms of investment, it's a hard business to do.
Thank you, Vlad. I appreciate you hitting all those points. I knew I threw a lot at you, um, but you did a good job of handling that. So thank you. um, I think on the investor point, I think it's really interesting because you even have some of that with traditional CEA, where some investors will come in and not be too sophisticated on the space and see like, oh, small profitability, or oh, you have all the startup costs. Like, why would I invest in a lettuce farm when I could go invest in some like software as a service product or something, so I see those similarities, but with mushrooms, it seems like it's even more because of a problem that we talked about actually in our first episode with Dr. Mark Lefstrud, or sorry, Professor Mark Lefstrud, where he pointed out that there aren't a lot of people who are learning about how to grow food anymore. And he's a professor who teaches people how to do so. And he says for every graduate student that I have, there's like a bunch of different opportunities that are open. It's never found, or never had a student that has found an issue with finding employment afterwards, right? So that just goes to show you how much demand there is for this stuff. Um, we talked about being able to get closer to consumers, even closer to retailers, how much that helps with profitability on the farm. When people think of mushrooms, I feel like they think of this like little organism that just grows everywhere and anywhere. I'd love to hear how SpawnX, the company, sort of mirrors that itself. how are you guys planning on growing in different places? Is there only one particular type of place that you can grow? There's controlled environment agriculture farms out there that can only grow if they were to work in an abandoned warehouse, right? And they can't adopt their business model to being like on a rooftop, for example. How are you guys able to be more adaptable when it comes to geography of where to grow?
Yeah, one moment. Yeah. So basically, it is a good question because we spend a lot of our effort to make our technology more scalable. So also the main problem of the mushroom farming now, like when we're talking about city farming, salads and so on, you need just like these lights, racks, water, and some nutrition, and that's all. In terms of mushroom farming, and for all of this stuff, you can get like many products of series produced hardware. You can install it everywhere. There is no problem with that. For the mushrooms, it is whole other thing. There is not like limited number of producers of really sophisticated hardware. For example, autoclaves for mushroom for substrate sterilization, and then we have these substrate thing because mushrooms consume the substrate. And as I said, for example, we had a farm of capacity of 10 tons of mushrooms per month on 500 square meters. In this case, we have on the farm around 120 tons of substrate. And it is a big deal, actually, to move that all around, to utilize it properly, and so on and so on. So we put really much effort in terms of making our technology really scalable. And in our portfolio, we have like an abandoned Soviet factory where we put our all farm, like 12-meter ceiling, city communications, but only walls present. This is one case scenario, so it is similar to warehouses, any production site. The next one was abandoned Soviet bunker. So basically underground facility with 60 centimeters thick walls and great insulation under the ground, which provides really saving expenses on electricity. And basically this is the second one. We can place our farms in any underground facility, bunker, abandoned like mine or gallery from the war, it doesn't matter. And then this technology is more scalable if we are talking about more retail solutions, so not full-scale industrial facilities. We can put our racks anywhere, in restaurants, in the stores. Rooftop can be possibly, but there will be some issues with insulation because obviously in sunny days it will get crazy hot and you will spend a bunch of electricity on taking the temperature down. That's why more basement options are more profitable for us, and this is like really scalable. So we can use new facilities, old facilities, anything. This is only the matter of basically certification in the exact case, because obviously legislation of and food security won't allow us to place the farms everywhere we want.
Yeah. I love what I'm hearing because it reminds me a lot of GreenForges in a way where we're striving to have, um, a farm essentially anywhere, right? You can put a forge on the top of a mountain, you could put it in an urban center underneath a new building that you're constructing. You could put it somewhere in the suburbs near a retailer, right? You can grow your stuff right next to a grocery store, which I think is very similar to what you're describing. So it's really awesome that we're creating products that are able to adapt to the geography that they're in and take advantage of the particular dynamics that exist within that geography, not just a sort of like monolithic, oh, I can only grow in this particular scenario, and if I don't, it's going to really affect my bottom line, which I think is something that has plagued the industry for some time. Although, like we said, there are people who are working past that, including ourselves. So, we're getting close to the end here. I would love to talk a little bit about, and we already have been talking about this in sort of a way, but the need to maybe find alternative investors, right? People, when they hear the word investors, they think VC, venture capitalist that's coming in and putting their money. They think of an angel investor, or maybe they think of a big institutional bank who's going to put down tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars to get that project off the ground. But I wonder if you've thought about, alternative investors, perhaps local businesses, perhaps like a first client. What are your thoughts on that? And how much energy are you spending at SpawnX trying to find those different types of investors, if at all?
Yeah, so basically there is like, first of all, the main thing here is the difference in terms of like city farming company, mushroom farming, it doesn't matter, mushroom farming or city farming startup, and a conventional B2B SaaS startup. So everyone in the startup world will think, as you said, right, about VCs, angel investors, and so on. But first of all, you have most of the city farming companies have the product. So we deal with that can be profitable from start on. With that, not as a startup that is running from round to round, and if he don't raise the next round, he will go bankrupt and close the company. We are doing more like a small business. Basically, as soon as we have started our first farm somewhere, it is profitable, and it can provide salaries for the R&D team. From this time on, we are a profitable small scale company. We obviously can benefit the leverage of VC funding and grow faster and exponentially, but we are not bound to this endless race from round to round until you hit your like scale up mark of number of users or anything to make you profitable. We are profitable from the beginning, and this is the way that every like city farming startup can take. You are establish your first farm, and then you sell your products from it, and you are a profitable company. You are not bound in terms of developing of your project to any financial terms or timing of your raising round. And this is a crucial point, and I hope actually that this strategy in terms of like this VC drawdown now a bit, they do not like they stepped back because of all the financial crisis, wars, and so on going all over the world. And basically, I hope that they will choose to search for such companies that the company is profitable each month from the beginning, and this is a more consistent way to do business. But in terms of funding, yes, obviously, besides all the VCs and angel investors, for the conventional production sites, you have banking loans. Obviously, it takes some time to get one and some collateral, but it is possible. Then you have all your buyers of your products. You can basically crowdfund your facility within your auditory to whom you will sell mushrooms to afterwards. And this is the other way. And obviously, you have your supplier. Each supplier is well-established company. It doesn't matter what it supplies, like machinery, software, or some consumables. But in most cases, they are ready to make a deal with you for investment upfront. It might be not the money, basically. For example, they provide you hardware for free or with like gratis period for some time until you hit your revenue stream. And this is a possible way to start up. And there are many ways that we can use, basically.
Yeah, this is really cool because I think that that is also something that's missing in the industry is thinking outside the box when it comes to how to fund your project, how to get it off the ground. A lot of people, are like we were talking about, I need to go find a VC out there. I need to go find an angel investor who's going to give me this capital, and then I'm going to take that capital and give it to my suppliers, and then split it amongst my R&D team, and then get something off the ground, and then I'm going to have 2 months of runway before I'm profitable. If I'm not profitable, we have to raise another round or we're going bankrupt. Like it's a super stressful, super just pressure-based system where I don't think the incentives are necessarily right. We're it's not like we're like you said, this is not a B2B SaaS where we're talking about some software that's being used by businesses. It's food. We need to put in effort. We need to make sure that things are in rush. We need to make sure that we're hitting and hitting all the right boxes because the consequences are real. And you're in Russia, or sorry, you're in Austria, but you're in Europe. About just how important food is. We're seeing food shortages all over the world, so we need to not be rushing this thing. We need to be doing it in a way that's sustainable, that's scalable, that's useful. So I love hearing that, you're not just thinking about going to VCs, you're thinking about going to your clients for funding, you're thinking about going to your suppliers, not even necessarily looking for capital, but looking for maybe a grace period where they can provide you the equipment up front until you're profitable. And having a business model that has a shorter window of time before they're profitable is incredible, right? And I think that speaks to just the nature of mushroom growing itself, right? Because you don't have to deal with lights right away. You have other things you have to worry about that make it so that those operational costs are just a tiny bit lower. And that really helps a lot. I think to close us out, I would love to talk directly about something we've sort of been talking about a lot already, but that's the importance of localism, right? Something we talked about with both Professor Lefstrud, but also Peter Lane was just how important it is to be able to get the food to people quickly, and not have to, jump through all these hoops that by the time the person gets, whatever product it is that you're growing, it's not even as fresh as it once was, not nearly as fresh as it once was. So, we talked about bypassing retailers already. We talked about how cool it is and it would be to, have a business model where you grow the product, you harvest it, you process it, you package it, and then you take it directly to the flats, to the apartments. That's something that we're looking at in GreenForges as well. We see our business model as our go-to-market strategy really as partnering with these real estate developers, building, constructing high-rise buildings, luxury buildings, incorporating a farm into the construction of that, and then having whatever fees it is that the tenants are paying cover the cost of the farm, and then also include like a food subscription, right? They don't have to go down to their Trader Joe's or their Whole Foods, walk or bike or drive 5-10 minutes away. They can just get their food right away every day. And I think there's a lot of benefits in that. Of course, from the farm side, it increases your profitability like we talked about, but it also allows the consumer itself to give feedback more easily to the grower. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is when it comes to growing mushrooms? Like if there's someone who has an issue with a particular um, you know mushroom that you're growing, or they want this type of mushroom to be grown, how much easier would it be for you to not have to, for that consumer not to go and talk to the store first and then the store talk to you, versus the consumer just being able to talk directly to you? How would that work, and would that be useful?
So you're perfectly right, but there is one remark on your previous. So I think that everyone, like even in the city farming industry, is doing this venture capital thing, just because not many startuppers come from the real business sector. Because when you are doing your own business, small scale, and on your own money, and you depend if you eat or not each month depend on how much money you make each month. Then there is no question about burn rate, running to next round. Basically, you need to be profitable. You need to earn money. And I think that this is a more problem of that startup world is more for more for actually startuppers. Not many major businessmen come to in the startup scene as humor, and this is really pity. But for the next question, for the counter side, yeah, it is really cool. We sold with the delivery to flats our mushrooms, and it is really helpful to have a community around your product. And when we're talking about any product, you name, if you want to kickstart your product on Kickstarter, you will have around that. I do not know, smart watches, smart 3D printers, anything that is more retail will have a community around its product with its feedback loop, with the community discussions of the product, of its features, what should be added to that, what should be fixed, and so on and so on. This is not the same case for food. And this is a really big problem, because all the food tech startups, agricultural startups, they do not have the connection to the end consumer that actually eats their food. And we need to overcome this. It is really, really complicated to do, because, as I said, you need to be able to generate this amount of retail volume to match your production capacities. But it is possible, and we already sold around from 5 to 10% to 5 to 7% of our production to retail, on retail basis, to the flats, and we had really first-hand feedback from our users. We began with that. I was delivering on my car each Sunday or Saturday, and go through all of the neighborhoods with 100 or 200 orders for 2 days, and deliver every package. And this is really crucial to make this feedback loop. It is a pity that not everybody can do that, but this is a point for collaboration, actually, for with marketplaces and so on. So alternative things except retailers, because these services have their reviews, feedbacks, and so on your products that you can utilize. Because obviously, to build your retail distribution, it is a hard business, and it is other business than every city farming startup is doing.
Yeah. I think it's so useful to just emphasize how important it is to be able to get that feedback from consumers, right? Because it's not just about them telling you, "Hey, I like this," or "I don't like that." It's about them building a community around your product, where you have people who love particular brands when it comes to, like you were saying, smartwatches or clothing brands. They're like, "I love Nike. Nike is great," right? But there's no one who's really like, "I love XYZ lettuce producer," or "I love XYZ." Like, no one's like, "I love Chiquita bananas," right? Like, Chiquita bananas are my thing. I hate other bananas, right? But people should, um, in a capitalist society, it's important for the market to be able to have that knowledge, and pick and choose winners and losers, so that the best product can be put forward. And because you have a retailer, sometimes that gets obscured, right? Sometimes that's not able to happen. You're not able to form that community. And these new types of business models where we're able to go directly to the consumer really helps alleviate some of that, really helps form that community, which is super important. So Vlad, I think that's a great way to end it, talking about forming community.
All the products are sold in ultra fresh segment are sold under retailer's trademark. There is no worldwide known or locally known brand of mushrooms or lettuce produced and sold in the retail stores. And this is a pity. Possibly it is a matter of other startup to establish a well-known brand for ultra fresh products, but this is whole other business. So thank you very much for the interview. We are now raising our pre-seed round to establish our first farm in Austria in the city of Graz. We have already contracts with the retailers. We have a place. We have everything in place except the money. And basically, we're raising now around 300K on our pre-seed round. And you can find all the information on our website, spawnx.at. Basically, we will establish our facility, and within 10 months, we will be working with consistent profits as a profitable company delivering mushrooms and scaling up by selling the mushroom farms.
That's great. That's terrific. Well, thank you, Vlad, for joining us in the GreenForges Interview Series. It was a pleasure to have you here. It was wonderful to talk about the importance of mushroom growing, localism, how to deal with some of these investor hesitancies. And thank you to the audience for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.